Well, hello, welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny, and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. And it's time to build a tank. Yes. And it's going to be this Sherman right here. This is Trumpeters M4 Tank Mid-Production, which is really an M4A2. You can tell because of the deck arrangement for the engine deck arrangement. But this is a 1/72nd scale kit. Probably the smallest tank I think I've ever attempted to build, but it should go okay. I hope. So we're going to find out how well this kit fits together and see what we can do with it. So let's jump down to the bench and get started.
Okay, so let's take a look at our instructions here. And as you can see here in step 1, we have those bogies that are molded as one piece. That's with the road wheels already on them. And then if you skip over to step 3, this is where we make up those bogies, where you can choose which road wheels you want to use. I think I'm going to go with the 5-spoke type. It just has a little bit more detail than the pressed metal type. Also, for some reason, the back side of the drive sprockets are a different part number. So here you can see in step 1, the front side is the same, but the back side is a different part number. And then we come over to where we have the multi-piece bogies. The back side is a different part number for that drive sprocket. So yeah, I think they're the same. They look the same, so we'll kind of fish through that. We'll use whichever one, depending upon what type of bogie that we decide to do. So we're going to compare the bogies from the multi-piece and the single piece. Of course, the first thing we need to do is cut out some parts, and using my flush cut sprue cutters here. As you can see, I do leave these sprue gates a little long, and I put this in the videos just for you guys that are new to modeling. It's just much easier to trim these off close to the part once you get them out of the sprues. So since I've selected a complete bogie that's molded as one piece, I'm just kind of sizing it up here and comparing it to which set that I need to build up. So that I pick out the right parts, and we're going to build one up. So of course we're going to need parts for that. And we're going to go ahead and clip off all the parts that we need. Now it's only 4 pieces for that single bogie that we want to build. And of course, again, it's much easier to clean up all these parts if you cut your sprue gates long. That way you can snip them off close to the part. And later on we can go ahead and use a sanding stick and clean all that up. You can also do some scraping with your hobby knife, which works really well. And in this small scale, I don't know that we're going to notice the difference because this is a really small tank. But as you can see here, I do polish those down with a sanding stick. So when it comes to putting these together, it's simple. You got 2 road wheels that goes on 2 axles. And it fits very nice. And then, of course, you got the second half of the bogie. Kind of sandwiches your road wheels together there. And we'll need a little bit of Tamiya extra thin. So I am being careful not to glue our road wheels so that they don't rotate. And here we're going to do a little comparison. And there is slightly better detail on the one that we assembled. So what we're looking at here is these spaces for those arms that come down for our road wheels. And the detail is a little bit more crisp versus the one that is molded as a single piece. You don't have that. So you're not going to catch that little subtle light and extra depth there. So I think we're going to go with these right here. We're going to go ahead and build these up. I mean, we got the parts in the kit. We paid for them, so we might as well build them. So, and I like to build, so that's what we're going to do. Now, one of the things that you really need to do to bring up the level of your modeling is to make sure that you get rid of these seam lines. And now I'm using this flexible sanding stick. It has that foam in between the two sanding surfaces, which really allows us to sand off that seam and not put any flat spots on our road wheels. Now, when it comes to our drive sprockets, it is keyed, which is important because that key is supposed to keep our drive sprockets lined up from both sides, the inboard and the outboard drive sprockets. And I'm just going to check it here with a straight edge because I want to make sure that our tracks are going to fit. So it's important that all those little teeth are lined up. So with building up these bogies, you can see that there is a difference on the hub size from the molding process. The smaller we'll put towards the outside because that looks more in scale, and the larger side of it we will put towards the inside, which you're not going to see. Now, when it comes to the bathtub style hull that we are provided in this kit by Trumpeter, it does have this large seam right on that breastplate, which I start off with a file, and then I progress down to a sanding stick, really thin sanding stick, because this is a very small model. So you need to have something that you can get into those little small spaces there and clean that up. So next up, we're going to go ahead and put on our bogies that we've assembled here. And you do have 3 for the left and 3 for the right, so don't get them mixed up because it does make a difference to where your support rollers are facing. So the support rollers go towards the rear. And here I am just going to go ahead and check with a straight edge to make sure that all of our road wheels are nice and lined up. And there is a little wiggle room there for those bogies when we cement them to our lower hull, so we want to make those adjustments before the glue dries. And we can go ahead and attach our drive sprockets here. And a little bit, it's me extra thin for that. And then we've got our idlers that go to the rear. And we'll just cement those into place. And there is a little wiggle room there too in this kit, so we want to make sure that those are lined up correctly. Moving on to step 4 here, we have the rear deck or the rear armored section there for the engine access and our air cleaners. So we'll go ahead and put that rear panel into place, and it fits as you would expect. No surprises there. I'm going to glue this from the inside. And then we have our these little dividing panels here, which the upper hull is going to sit on these. So we want to make sure that these really seat down onto those sponsons. And they're in full contact like they're supposed to be. And we'll just put a little cement there to hold them into place. Now, I decided to do these first before we got to the air cleaners because it would be easier to kind of get my fingers in there. Now, when it comes to the air cleaners, they just simply tab in. As you can see here, they even included those air intake pipes on those air cleaners. Not that it would ever be seen on, number 1, a model this small, and number 2, because of the location up underneath the rear deck, you're not going to see that. But it's nice that they thought about that. And now we can put our towing pintle into place. I'm not so sure that it's not upside down on the mount, but we do need to glue the mount into place. So next up is step 5. Now they want you to put the headlights on, but we're not going to do that yet. We're going to move on a little bit here because there are some things that we actually need to do. And primarily, it's these lifting eyes here where the tank can be slung onto ships. Yeah, and as you can see, they're molded into the upper hull, and they don't provide that detail that you would expect with a Sherman tank. And we also have that with the lifting eyes that is on the turret as well. You can see there, it's just kind of a glob, which kind of detracts from the overall look of the Sherman tank. And also the center one there above where the gun mantlet would be. So what we're going to do, we're going to replace that. We're going to use this craft wire here. Now this is a jewelry wire, and we're going to be using the smallest wire there, which is 24 gauge. And here we're just sizing it up to make sure that we're still kind of in scale here. And the thickness looks good, so I think that's a good replacement for all of these lifting eyes and lifting loops that we need to do for the hull. So I'm just checking with a drill bit here and just select whatever size that seems appropriate to bend our wire around to get the right arc. So of course that drill bit needs to be smaller than that arc to account for the diameter of the wire. And I want to use the same bit for all of them because that's kind of the way they look. So yeah, this is going to work for us. Now I don't really remember what size drill bit this is. It might have been a 57 or a 56. I don't really remember, but you just kind of eyeball this. So next up, we're just going to trim off one of those loops. I'm going to start here on the front of the tank, and we do need to trim that down where it was molded in place and kind of sand it flat. And of course, you know, it's all about choosing the correct drill bit for the wire that we're using. It needs to be slightly larger than the wire, so we're going to pick this one right here, and that's the one we're going to use. I'm going to chuck it up in our Tamiya handy drill, which I've really enjoyed using this drill, which we made last year, and we can use that to drill out these holes for the wire. And the really important thing here is our drilling angle, because of the way these loops are, especially here on the front of our tank. We want to make sure that we get that angle correct, which is actually vertical to what would be the, say, ground surface. So when we insert that wire, we want it to stand up and look correct. Here we're just checking to make sure that the wire passes through the holes that we drilled and that we got the right drill bit. So when it comes to straightening out this wire, because it is coiled up, I'm just using a small piece of wood here and rolling it vigorously and with a lot of pressure on my cutting mat. And that'll just take out all those bends in the wire and straighten it out for us. And now we're going to use our drill bit as a bending mandrel, and we're just going to bend that wire right around as we sized it up before, so that we made sure that we had kind of the right bend there. So we need to check our work and see where we're at. So we'll just go ahead and insert that wire into the hole. And don't worry, you need it to extend to the inside of the hull there, to the lower surface, because that's where we're going to be cementing it up or gluing it to the hull. So once we get it inserted, we want to check and make sure that everything looks right, and you want to get the right height there. So I'm just checking it against the one on the opposite side, assuming that that's the correct angle and scale. Now we do the same thing for the rear lifting eyelets here, or lifting loops. I did leave the the bottom portion there where we trimmed it off, the polystyrene off, so that I would know exactly where to put my holes before we clean it all up. So we're going to drill it first, and then we'll go back and trim off that little bit of excess polystyrene there where we had trimmed those horribly molded in pieces that Trumpeter had put on. And then we can sand that down, and that'll be ready for our loops. Now when it comes over towards the right rear of our upper hull here, getting that particular loop out is a little bit difficult. So I do have this little chisel here. This is a modeling chisel. It comes with different bits to be used, different chisel ends. So I just selected one, and I don't think I really need that, that handle to do this work here, because we got to dig in between the tools that are molded onto the rear deck there. So that really helps having something that you can really get down in there, and this is the first time that I've needed to use that. So now we can go ahead and mark and drill out the holes for this particular rear lifting eye. Now, as you can imagine, in such a small space, it's really hard to clean up. So I'm just going to use a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin here to help smooth out those little edges there where we trimmed everything out, and that will work fine for us, I believe. So next up, we're going to use this medium CA glue here to secure our wire once we have them bent into shape. So we just need to insert them after we bend them into a nice little loop there, and make sure that we have some tails of that wire sticking below the surface there, because that's where we're going to apply our the CA glue, which is going to hold them into place so that they don't fall out. That's kind of important there. So once we get our CA glue on and we allow it plenty of time to set up, and that's important. Drying time is always important there. And you do want to check and make sure that the height is correct on these before that CA glue does set up. But once everything is in good shape there and straight, and you're ready to go, and you can see here where we have those 4 on the hull installed. I think that looks so much better than what Trumpeter had done. But like I was saying, once that glue sets up, we can go ahead and trim off the excess wire that sticks down below the inside of the hull, because we don't want that to interfere with the fit of this upper hull to the lower hull when we go to install it. Now when it comes to the turret itself, we did exactly the same thing. It's the same procedure, it's the same bend, nothing dramatic there. Of course, you do want to trim off anything that's sticking way down in the way. As you can see there, that piece of wire was quite long, but yeah, I think that really looks good, and I think it's really worth your time to go ahead and do this little bitty improvement here, especially to this kit, because those loops that they had molded into the hull and the turret was terrible. So for those of you that want to know what size this wire is, if you don't know what 24 gauge is, it's roughly it says 0.49 millimeters, but it would be a half millimeter, 0.5 millimeter wire to use there. So again, we're going to go back to our instructions and look. We are going to skip putting the headlights on at this point, and we're going to go ahead and attach the upper hull to the lower hull, because that's where we may have some sort of an issue. So we want to avoid knocking things off, especially at this scale. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, I am always a firm believer in test fitting everything. So we're going to go ahead and test fit the upper hull to the lower hull to make sure that we don't have any surprises when we go to assemble that. And the fit is pretty good. Not a problem. There's a small gap there to the front breastplate, but we'll fill that later. I am going to use the thick Tamiya cement in this case, and we're going to put it on those little pieces there that we installed on the rear of the upper hull, and then right on the front where the upper hull makes contact with those bottom side of those sponsons there. So once we get everything oriented correctly, we'll go ahead and stick the upper hull to it and make sure that it's seated as far up as it'll go, and press it down. Now, the reason why we're using the thick cement is it's going to fill any little gaps there and give us a good positive surface to glue everything in. And then for the smaller little areas, we can come in with our Tamiya Extra Thin and make sure that everything is secure. And as you can see here, we can run it down the sides as well. Probably overkill for this size model, but I like to make sure everything is secure. So with that done, we're going to need to use a little bit of perfect plastic putty to fill that gap that is, well, it's way too large, of course, from the front slope of the armor there. So this is a water-based putty, and it's okay for filling small gaps. So I do let it dry, and then we're going to come back in and clean it up with a cotton swab here with a little bit of water, and we'll just clean that up really good. And we do have a small gap that has where the perfect plastic putty didn't really penetrate. So we'll go back in and refill that and make sure that we get that putty pressed down into that little slot there. We don't want any gaps there because once we paint this up, that would be very visible. And on a small model like this, that would be a detractor from what it looks like, or supposed to look like, I should say. Not supposed to be a gap there, and we'll just clean that up. So we just need to let that dry. So going back to our instructions here, we have some additional armor plates that goes on in front of the bow gunner and the driver. And Trumpeter has included a nice little diagram there to show us the contact points and the angle at which it needs to be. So we'll go ahead and add a little bit of cement there to kind of anchor the plate into place so that we can maneuver it around and get everything lined up right where it's supposed to be. And then we can cement that into place and then do the one on the opposite side. This is the driver's side. You do want to check and make sure that these plates kind of line up from one to the other if you're viewing it from the side of the vehicle. If there is a strange angle going on there where the two don't line up, it would be very visible. So next up, we can go ahead and put our headlights on at this point. We don't have to worry about breaking these off because we've got all the major things done. And they are keyed, kind of a half moon key shape there so that you don't put your headlights on backwards. And we just want to make sure that those two are lined up with one another so that it wouldn't be distracting later on. And it really pays to go back and take a good look at everything that you've done and make sure that you do have everything lined up so that, especially at this scale, it's not crooked or out of alignment. Next up, we'll put that rear armored plate onto the rear upper hull, just checking the fit. And, of course, test fitting is critical in any model building endeavor that you care to do, because if things are misaligned or they don't line up correctly, that's going to affect later on. And there are certain things that you just can't hide with paint. So next up, we're going to put on our engine crank, which is it has these two little holes where it needs to be located. So a little bit of TME extra thin there, and we'll go ahead and press that into place, and it aligns correctly. And that's what we get. That looks good. Next up, we can go ahead and put on our armored plate here that goes over top of where the engine intakes are. And it is kind of hinged, so we do need to locate those correctly. Yeah, I'm having trouble here. But once we get it and get it pressed down into place, we can completely cement it around the front edge, and no real trouble there. Next up is our bow gun, which goes in. The way it is slotted, you can't really get it upside down. If you do, you will have to have tried really, really hard. So we just want to line that up. Okay, so on to step 7, and we're looking at building up our turret here. And since there's no internal parts for our main gun, we will start with the bottom section of the turret, because the main armament is attached from the exterior. And here we have our lower turret ring and bottom section to cement up to the bottom of the turret. And we'll just go ahead and place that into place. And the fit is pretty good. I'm going to cement it up on the very bottom first, so that we don't press it in too deep into the turret, because it does have just a little bit of room where you can actually over-insert it. We'll let that set up a little bit first before we go around the back of the turret and cement that section up. There is a small gap there, but we can kind of press that together and eliminate that gap. With that done, we can go ahead and put our commander's hatch into place. And with that done, we can go ahead and move on to our main armament. So the elevation and declination portion of our main armament here just kind of snaps into place from the back side of the mounting plate. And there's the only thing that's going to hold it in is the sandwiching between the mantlet and the actual gun tube once we get that cemented in. So we do want to make sure that that's lined up in the hole, because this fit is rather tight and I really don't want to loosen it up. So next up, we insert our gun tube into the mantlet, and it is a nice snug fit. And I just want to make sure that it's pressed all the way home there. And we're going to just touch it with a little bit of TME extra thin. And then we can insert it right through the mounting plate and into the rotating portion there. And we'll use a little bit more TME extra thin on the back side of the gun tube, which will cement it to the piece that allows it to actually elevate and declinate. With that done, we can go ahead and mount the main armament to the turret. Nice fit. I don't have any complaints about that. And there's nothing there to really truly fix. And it actually fits together really well. And a little bit of cement there. And there we go. So we have our main armament now in place. So looking everything over, one of the things that we need to do now is to check our total fit to the hull. I probably should have done this earlier, but we're going to do it now that I'm thinking about it. So it is a little tight, and then the one consideration that we need to pay attention to is that once we paint everything up, if you still want your turret to actually rotate smoothly, you may need to remove a little bit of polystyrene here. And here I'm filing these lugs down a little bit. Now, I didn't do it before cementing this bottom portion of the turret to the actual turret because there might have been the possibility of it being inserted a little bit too deep. So I'm going to go ahead and do it now. I probably should have done it before I attached the the main armament, but that's okay. We catch things as we go, and now it's nice and loose, which will allow for the paint once we get everything painted up, and our turret will still be able to rotate. So if we wish to change that orientation later on, it won't be an issue. So we do have some mold seam lines here on the turret that we need to take care of. So I come in first with a kind of a round file. Well, it's actually not kind of. It actually is a round file. And we're going to scrape it down a little bit and make sure that that seam is just removed so that it doesn't show up after painting. So next up is we need to attach our ammo can and ammo can holder to the 50 caliber machine gun, and it's simply slotted in. Now the important thing here is to make sure that we get the alignment right. We don't want it angled towards the rear of the gun or forward, and we also want it level with the top plate of the machine gun. So that alignment is important because that would be a detractor from the overall look. Moving on to step 8, as you can see here, we're supposed to be using model cement to attach our tracks, so we don't have to melt over any pins or anything for those tracks. So I go ahead and I align it and press it into place like it's supposed to be. And my first attempt here, and key there is first attempt, I'm using Tamiya Extra Thin to cement these together, and that doesn't work. With a little bit of tension, it will pull right apart. So once it's come apart, yeah, I'm thinking, well, maybe the Tamiya thick cement will work. So I go ahead and use that Tamiya thick cement, and we're going to use the other track just to make sure that there's nothing on the surface there. And I did clean these up with isopropyl alcohol to make sure that we had a good clean contact surface. So we'll press it together, and of course you need to use tweezers to make sure that it's fully engaged, and kind of hold it into place there. And I let the cement dry, which is what you should do. You should always make sure that your cement is dry before you test it. And well, it pulled apart. And of course that thick cement left a residue on there, so we're going to have to kind of clean that off there. It just kind of rolls right off of these tracks, so I'm starting to wonder if the cementability, is that a word? Yeah. Well, anyway, we're going to clean this up. I'm going to use a toothbrush here, an old toothbrush, just to make sure that I get all that residue off, and then we'll swab it again with the isopropyl alcohol to make sure that it's nice and clean. And my last attempt is with medium CA glue, and once it's dry, it seems to be holding. So my recommendation is use CA glue, and we're not going to have to worry about it. At least I hope. So now we can go ahead and install our tracks. First of all, we start with the drive sprocket. and make sure that it's engaged in the teeth there. And we're just going to feed it up over top of our return rollers there. And it is a tight fit. It is a stretching track. So I do hope that our CA glue holds and doesn't pop apart. So we're going to line everything up, and of course we're going to need to use probably our thin tweezers to get everything seated right where it's supposed to be, because these are really small tracks. Now, since these tracks are so tight, one of the things that I'm really worried about is that small attachment point there for our track tensioner wheel there at the rear of the vehicle. I'm kind of wondering whether or not that's going to hold up, because, like I say, these are tight. So we need to check that and make sure that it's not bending it. And over time, as we let this sit, that track should stretch out. So that looks pretty good. And we haven't broken anything off at this point, so we're in good shape. So we go ahead and attach the other track. Same process. No big surprises there, and we just simply stretch that track right on. So we'll go ahead and set our 50 caliber machine gun into place. Now we're not going to cement it yet because, well, it's just so much easier to paint if it's not attached to the vehicle. So we'll put it into place there. So Trumpeter did provide us with some nice accessories. That's 2 crates there, 2 fuel cans, and 2 either oil or fuel drums too, which was really nice of them to do that for us. And if you've never built a 1/72nd scale armor vehicle before, here's a good way to look at it. This is the M4 Sherman, the M4A2 Sherman, sitting in the palm of my hand.
All right, there we go. There's our tank. This is it's an M4A2, and we did small improvements there with the lifting eyes and loops. I think that looks much better than that solid block that Trumpeter had molded in there. I don't know why in the world they just didn't mold apart for that, because that would have been so much better. And I would have preferred if the tools had been separate. Gives much better dimensional appearance, you know, than having it molded into the upper hull here. But other than that, we didn't really have any problems except for the tracks. First I tried the Tamiya Extra Thin. That didn't work. And then the Tamiya Heavy Cement. That didn't work. That peeled right off. And then finally, we used our Star Bond medium strength CA glue, and that seems to be holding. So it's holding pretty good. They're not coming apart. So, and they do fit tight though. You got to really stretch them suckers on there. I was worried I was going to break the idlers off, but they seem to be holding up, so we're in good shape there. So, special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys that I keep making these videos. And the next video will be part 2 of this build, which is the painting. So we're going to get it all painted up and ready for display. And if you are new to the channel and not a subscriber, I hope today I earned your subscription, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, don't forget to give a like. Really appreciate that. So, until next time, guys, y'all stay safe.